I've met some of you, and this is quite a group. Thank you for inviting me. I would have never guessed in doing the research that the answer to what is the secret to success would be habits. I also would have never guessed that most of the habits that I had were poverty habits, what I call poverty habits. I grew up in an Irish Catholic family. Anybody here Irish? American? How many? 15 in your family?
Right.
Yeah. Right. So we thought we were farmers.
Right.
There were 8 of us, 8 children, and my mom and dad and my Aunt Peg. And it was survival of the fittest in our family. And so my dad wasn't around a lot because he had a very successful business that went under literally overnight. We were millionaires and then we were poor. His warehouse burnt down. It's a long, complicated story, but we lost pretty much everything except our house. And I was in the 3rd grade at the time. And I remember how it affected me negatively. I mean, it affected all of us, I think, in our family negatively. But the one thing that really hurt us was my dad had so many good habits. He eventually recovered and he retired a millionaire. But in order to do that, he had to work around the clock. So we never saw my dad. He was just never home. So we picked up a lot of bad habits. And we struggled, all my siblings. It's very interesting. We all struggled in life. And I found out from my research, we had a lot of the same bad habits. We just picked them up from each other. I mean, we literally raised ourselves. My mom was too overwhelmed with, dealing with my Aunt Peg, who was a little crazy. And 8 kids. I mean, she just couldn't handle it. So I guess that stuck in my head, being rich and then being poor and spending most of my life poor and struggling. So what happened was a small business client of mine came. I just taken over the helm of my CPA firm. It was in 2004. I don't think I was there for more than a couple of months. And then he called and he said he needed to meet with me. And so I said, okay. And we met that night. And his whole business was going under. And he had inherited the business from his dad. So his dad had run it very successfully. But this small business client came to me because the bank had shut their line of credit and they turned it into a term loan. And he was upset and he was hoping that I would be able to get him, through my banking relationship, some money. And I told him it's impossible. It takes years to develop relationships with bankers. I can't do it in 3 days. And then he broke down and he started crying. I have 1,000 clients, so they all have problems. But for some reason, this guy, he just got to me, here. And I remember going back and telling my wife, I've got to figure this out. I've got to find out what it is why are some people so successful in life and why are some just so miserably, struggling and impoverished and bankrupt, and like this individual. And so I started doing research. And what it started as 20 questions evolved into 144 questions. And I started out with the millionaire group, people that had $3.2 million or more and $160,000 of gross income or more. And then once I was done with that group, there was, I think, 233 of them. And there was 128 poor people. I tackled them next. I was trying to understand really what it was that they were doing from the minute they put their feet on the floor to the minute that they put their head on the pillow. I wanted to know what went on in their entire lives. So that's how these questions started to grow from 20 to 40 to 100 to 144. And boy, it was like walking in the footsteps of the rich and the poor. I had, in some cases, it took me 2 years just to get through one interview. Imagine 144 questions. I'm trying to accumulate data and try and understand things. So imagine I've got 350 some odd people that I'm interviewing, and I'm trying to run a CPA firm. Well, what I found out is that it's our habits. And what was interesting is Duke in 2006 did a study on habits. And what they determined was that 40% or more of all of our daily activities are habits. Habits are unconscious behavior, unconscious choices, unconscious emotions. They're things that are below the radar. We're not even aware that we're doing them, that they're habits. The small business client, what I found out, see, oftentimes one habit can sink you and one habit can lift you up. This small business client, when I met with him to tell him I don't know what the problem is. I don't know why you're failing, your business is failing. I looked at everything internally. Your internal controls are fine. I have other auto body clients. Everything kind of matches up. The only difference is that you're taking a salary of $150,000, and most of my auto body owners were taking a salary of $100,000. And he said, "Well, that's just my cost of living. It's $150,000. What can I do? That's my standard of living." So, anyway, we're sitting down, and kind of there's like this. We're enveloped with silence, because he's upset. I don't have the answers to his problem. I don't know why he's failing. And so I try to break the ice, and I said, "Hey, what do you do for fun?" And he says, "Oh, I love playing golf. I play golf every weekend. If I could play 5 days a week, I would play golf 5 days a week, but I have to work." So I said, "Is that all you do, just golf?" And he said, "Yeah, pretty much. I work during the week." And I said, "So that's it, just golf and work?" And he says, "Well, except for Wednesdays." And I said, "Well, what happens on Wednesdays?" He says, "Oh, this is when I get a couple of bottles of wine and I get a prostitute." He was divorced 12 years. His kids were older. He was living basically by himself. And he looked at, I had a look on my face, I guess, and I think he thought it was like, moral indignation or something. But in my family, there was no moral indignation, trust me. Laws were obstacles in my family. So I said, no, I said, "It's none of that. It has nothing to do with that." I said, "I just had an epiphany, though." He said, "What's that?" I said, "I now know why you're failing." I said, "How much does it cost for the that Wednesday night?" And he said, "Oh, it's about $600. So I did the math, and I said, "That's like $30,000 a year net. That's $50,000 gross. Theirs is $50,000. You multiply that by 12 years, that's $600,000. Guess what his line of credit was? $525,000. He was financing his prostitution, and the alcohol, and with the line of credit, and he didn't realize it. That was the thing. He didn't even know. It never even crossed his mind. That one habit was dragging him under. And this is the thing with habits. This is why they call it the secret to success. They asked J. Paul Getty, "What's the secret to success?" He says, "Wake up early, work hard, and strike oil." Even he didn't understand why he was rich. Maybe he's throwing it up there to random good luck. I mean, give me a break. You guys ever hear of Ben Carson? He's like one of my heroes in life. What I love about Ben Carson's story is he was raised in the ghettos of Detroit. It was him, his older brother, I think his brother was 2 years older than him, and his mom. And his mom cleaned houses for rich people. And so one day, she's pays attention to, how the rich people are raising their kids. And she notices two things. The first thing she notices is that they don't let their kids watch a lot of TV. Or they didn't let their kids watch a lot of TV. The second thing is they made their kids read. Now, this isn't schoolwork. This isn't, science fiction like I was talking to Sharon about, which is one of my things, my poverty habits. It was to learn. Read to learn. So she said, well, heck, I'm just going to duplicate what they're doing. Obviously, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just going to duplicate what they're doing. So she went back home and she sat the boys down. She said, no more TV, and you're going to read from now on. And the kids griped, and they said, I don't want to read. Not only did she limit their TV to an hour a day, she picked the programs they had to watch, right? Imagine that. I can't imagine my mother doing that. Right. And what they had to do is they had to go after school, which ended like around 3:30. They had to go right to the library. And their mother got home at about 6:30, so they spent 3 hours at the library. And she said, I want you to read, and to hold them accountable, she made them write a summary of whatever it was that they read for the week. And they had to hand it to her, and then she would sit there on like a Friday night and make marks on it and then hand it back to them. This went on for years, and it wasn't until Ben Carson was in high school that he overheard someone talking about his mother. It was then that he found out his mother was illiterate. She could never read what they were writing. But intuitively, she knew that if I could get my kids to read, then maybe I can get them out of this ghetto life. And what Ben Carson writes in his book, I think it's called Gifted Hands, and there's another book he wrote. I read both of them. They're just great books. What he writes about is that he and his brother figured, well, heck, we got to read. I want to read something that I like. So Ben Carson started reading about science, and that kind of evolved into medicine. And also successful people. He liked biographies on successful people like Benjamin Franklin, and think of any successful person 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And his brother had a proclivity for mechanical engineering. But they both read the books on successful people. At least he says so in his books. And one of the things that was common among all of the successful people books that they read, the biographies, was that a lot of these successful people started out poor, dirt poor. In fact, he even said they were poorer than me. And so he and his brothers were talking about it. They said, well, heck, if they can get rich, why can't we get rich? We probably are more educated than they were. So that's when that light bulb went off in his head and his brother's head, and they went from C students to A students. Ben Carson went off to become a neurosurgeon, and his brother became a mechanical brake engineer for Boeing, which he's a fairly successful individual in his own right. One habit tears a small business person down, drags them under. And one habit lifts someone up. That's how powerful habits are. We don't even think about it. It's unconscious. We're not even aware. Awareness is the starting point for all habit change. If you don't become aware, you'll never change a habit. And that's why I'm spreading my message, because I'm trying to make people aware of their habits. And one of the habits that I adopted was daily exercise. I started in 2007. I wasn't even done with my research back then, but I had uncovered some information on how these wealthy people took care of themselves health-wise. And I found out that one of the individuals told me that they tracked their calories. Another one told me that they kept their calories under 2,000 calories. They gave it a name that I stole from them. They call it a caloric threshold, he called it. And another woman who was in my study, she's told me how she lost weight and got into a regimen of eating healthy. So I started to adopt a lot of their health habits. And at the time I was 220 pounds. It was July 2007. And by February of 2008, I was 174 pounds. And my wife finally said, Tom, you've got to stop. You know, you got to stop this tracking schedule nonsense. People are starting to ask me if you have cancer or something. So I actually brought my weight back up to 185, and I kind of keep it there, you know. But when I go over, I just look at what the wealthy people did, the tracking schedule that I copied from them, and I just lose weight. So in 2014, Brown University did a study, a survey. It wasn't a study, it was a survey of 50,000 families. And what they discovered was that most of the habits that we pick up in life are formed by the age of 9, right? So let me ask you a question. What happens, where does a kid between 0 and 9 spend most of their time? Well, it's at home and their parents, and then school. But most of it is their parents. So these habits that the kids pick up, they pick up from their parents. Now, there's physiology and neurology behind this. There's something called mirror neurons that exist. When we're born, there are hundreds of millions of these mirror neurons. They're like an evolutionary byproduct. Back in the caveman days, I guess, when we were first evolving, there was a lot of predators, a lot of dangers, environmental hazards out there. So through evolution, the brain decided we have to have these things called mirror neurons, just when they're young. They get pruned later on in life. What do mirror neurons do? They're also known as monkey see, monkey do neurons. The purpose of mirror neurons is to enable a child to emulate their parents, their behavior, their emotions, and their thinking. The theory behind it is that if they emulate their parents, they'll increase their chances of survival, which goes back, of course, to the evolution of humanity. So these mirror neurons exist so that we can copy what our parents are doing. So we actually don't have much say in it when we're children. We're hardwired to copy our parents. So if our parents are sitting on the couch watching TV and eating Doritos and drinking beer, which sounds like a pretty good night to me. We're gonna emulate that, right? We're gonna pick up those bad habits. If your parents are reading all the time and learning and talking about things and exciting, like that's what Steve Jobs grew up with. His parents were really into a lot of intellectual stuff, and I think it sparked a lot of interest in him. You pick up that stuff as a kid. You pick up these habits. So when I was done with my research, and this is just, I wanted to show you this. This is the research summary. I famously call a research summary. It's got 325 data points that I've tracked. It's broken up into rich and poor, and then I have the category here. That, for the most part, are habits, but in some cases they're thinking, they're behaviors that aren't necessarily habits, they're ways of doing things. But I tracked 325 of these data points. And when I wrote Rich Habits, I really just wanted to highlight what I called keystone habits. There are only 10 in the Rich Habits, but there's literally 40 or 50 keystone habits. And I thought I'd go above and beyond what's in Rich Habits, and I wanted to share some of these. And the reason I have these cards is because I have statistics, and even though I'm an accountant and I'm supposed to be really good with numbers, I don't want to screw up the numbers. So one of the things that I found was wealthy people did what they love. I like to call it putting their ladder on their wall. Now, when I was going to college, I was in my second semester of my freshman year. And one of the few times my dad was home, I said, "Hey, Dad, I got to pick a major. Got any ideas?" And he said, "Accounting. You'll never starve." You know, that meant a lot to me because there were nights we starved in our house. You know, 8 kids, 5 boys, 3 girls, and we went hungry a lot. And so I said, "Damn, I'm going to become an accountant because I don't want to go hungry anymore." So I put my ladder on my dad's wall. Now, I'm a pretty good accountant, and I like certain parts of it, but it's work, right? Most people, they do whatever they do, it's work. I'm no different, at least with the accounting part. The Rich Habits, holy mackerel. When I started writing books, now I never wrote a book before in my life. When I started writing, when what happened was I had some of these, I called them learning sessions, and I would have 10 or 12 people in the learning sessions. They'd be free. I'd post something on the YMCA wall, just like Dale Carnegie used to do. I stole it from him. I said, well, if he did it, I'm going to try and do the same thing. So I put it on the YMCA wall, and I got people who would call in and say, "Yeah, I'd like to go to your learning session." It was right around the corner of my office from the Y. So I did that for probably about a year, had about 20 of these learning sessions. And some of the people started having real success. And I have one insurance guy made $150,000 in additional income, and another person made another $75,000. Now, that's not millions, but every year, if you're increasing your income every year, it adds up. So they cornered me one day and they said, "You've got to write a book on this stuff." So I said, "I don't know how to write a book. Remember, I'm an accountant. I'm a CPA. I know numbers." He said, "You got to write a book." So they planted a seed in my head, and it started to germinate. And here's the interesting thing about when you pursue something that you love. When you tap into something that you love, when the seed gets planted in your head, you almost lose all control over what happens afterwards. It creates so much passion and inspires you to do so things that are way beyond your capabilities. I never knew how to write. I found out I'm a great writer. And I am. I'm not lying. I'm a good writer. But I never knew that. I never knew that. If that seed hadn't been planted in my head to pursue something, that became my dream. I like speaking. I'm not a great speaker. I don't think so. But I like speaking, so I don't care. You're going to listen to me. I'm going to talk. You took my table over there. I got their ear. So I like teaching. I always was a good teacher. I taught in grad school and I taught in college. I just loved to teach. I love teaching. So all this stuff kind of came together in this. I said, well, now I know what I'm going to do. I have my dream. I'm going to become a writer, speaker, and media personality. To hell with accounting. Well, 96% of the poor, I found in my research, hated what they did for a living. 96%, imagine that? No wonder they're poor. I mean, you hate going to your job. Of course, you're going to do a bad job. You're not going to put as much effort into it. You're going to do the bare minimum so you don't get fired. 86% of the rich in my study liked their job. What was interesting about that was the 86% that liked their job, they had an average net worth of $3.4 million, and it took them 32 years to accumulate that. But 7% of the wealthy in my study loved what they did for a living. And they had a net worth of $7.4 million, an average net worth. and it took them 12 years to accumulate it. 20 years less, $4 million more. I mean, that's the power of putting your ladder on your wall. And this is why it's so important for parents to really, and grandparents to really be careful, you know, when they're directing their kids or the grandkids. They have to really know, you know, what path they're putting them on. You know, if they have a talent in a certain area, and I think too much of the parents, what they're doing nowadays, they get their kids caught up in these sports programs, right? So now you spend 10 years playing soccer. You spend 10 years playing baseball or basketball, and that's it. You know, it's travel teams. You know, it's 4 days a week. Saturdays and Sundays are completely occupied. Yeah, I absolutely have no life as a parent. And then what happens is it's over. They stop playing, and the only thing they learned was soccer or baseball. What parents should be doing, and what the schools really should be doing too, is exposing kids to new things, new creative things that require skills every 3 to 6 months. And this way they will find their talents. And when you find your natural talents, therein lies your purpose in life, your calling, your innate talents. But most of us never ever find our innate talents. The lucky few who do, the Warren Buffetts of this world, the Steve Jobs, the Elon Musks, the lucky few that do, holy mackerel, do they take off in life, right? I mean, every one of us would have that capability. There's genius inside every one of us. And I saw that in these 177 millionaires that I studied. Good goals versus bad goals. Has anybody ever heard of a bad goal? Did they ever talk about goals in a negative context? No. No. All goals are good. What I found out from my research was that there are good goals and there are bad goals. An example of a bad goal. You work your butt off. You work overtime. You save up enough money and you buy a 65-inch TV. No, you achieved your goal. That was a goal. Maybe it's an expensive car. I did one of these speaking engagements when I was starting out in the libraries. Boy, I'll never do that again. The people that you get in these libraries, they're a little crazy. So this one woman came up to me and she said, boy, I was so inspired by your talk. I'm going to set a goal so that I can buy a brand new 320-something BMW. I said, I think I might have communicated improperly to you. That's a bad goal. And she said, "What? I don't understand. I thought all goals were good." And I said, "No, there are bad goals. Here's what happens when you set a bad goal. It has short-term benefit and short-term happiness. Sure, that TV, is great and it's up there, but you get used to it. There's something called the happiness baseline. 50% of our happiness is derived from our DNA, genetics. 40% comes from activities, and 10% comes from your financial circumstances. So if you buy a Ferrari and you spend 2 years away from your family working around the clock, and now you've got that Ferrari, you lost 2 years with your family, you never get that back. And what happens after about 2 months of driving that Ferrari? It's just a car. Yeah, your insurance goes up. Every time you go to get it repaired, it's $1,000. So that's a bad goal. Good goals are goals that create long-term benefits and long-term happiness. An example would be, say, saving money for a vacation home. Now, a vacation home, especially if you have a family, for those of you who have families, you understand where I'm going with this. You get to have an opportunity, a venue, a hub, where everybody gets together. And you know, when there's nothing better than family. So when you get together with your family, you have happiness. And here's the secret to happiness. Frequent happiness events. The more happiness events you have in life makes you a winner. Makes you ultimately overall happier. So these vacation homes create these happiness events, these continuous weekend after weekend happiness events. Long-term benefit, long-term happiness. That's what a good goal is. Good money habits. This is kind of a boring topic, so I'm going to skim through this. What I found in my research is that particularly the self-made millionaires, this 177 out of 233 wealthy were self-made millionaires. They got into a habit very early on in their careers of saving money. They picked it up from their parents. Didn't matter that the parents were poor. Their parents taught them that rich habit. So they picked up this habit of putting away 10 or 20% of their net pay and living off of the 80% or 90%. I made my son, when he graduated in 2011, he got his first job, and I made him put $400 a month into a Roth IRA. I don't think it was a month. Maybe it was the first payment that he made. He said, "Dad, I can't afford this. I barely have any money left." I said, "Brenton, don't. I know you want to reduce it." He goes, "Can't we cut it down to like $50?" I said, "No." I said, "You can do whatever you want." That's what I said to him. It's your money. But my job as a parent is to mentor you. So here's the advice. Don't do it. Do whatever you want. But I'm advising you not to do it. And I'll be very disappointed if you did it. He goes, "Oh." So he struggled that whole year. In fact, I told him, "Don't worry, if you run into trouble, I'm your safety net. I'll help you out." I just wanted to get him in the habit of saving, right? So there were 2 times that first year I had to throw him like $300 and $500. $800 out of my pocket. But he got into the habit. And then he got a raise, a 4% raise, and then it became a little bit easier the second year. The third year, he got a promotion to sales, and now he's getting a little bit salary and commission. And that put him over the top. Now he's getting he'll kill me for saying this, but I'm so proud of him. He's getting a $30,000 bonus for the quarter. Right, a lot of money. Kid makes $60,000 base. He's getting a $30,000 bonus for the quarter. He's one of the top sales guys. They sent him to Portugal for a trip. He just wanted a trip with all the top executives. And so I said, "What are you going to do with that $30,000, Brent?" He goes, "Well, what do you think I'm going to do, Dad?" I said, "How much is going into your 401k?" He says, "As much as they'll let me put in."
That's good.
Right?
That's good.
So now I know he's taken care of. I got the other 2 girls, that's another issue. So that's what I found is wealthy people save. They get into the habit of saving. See, there's 3 ways you can accumulate wealth. You can live below your means. And anybody that listens to Robert Kiyosaki, you know, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he hates the notion of living below your means. He always rails against it. The second way is to expand your means. And that's getting a job, a second job, starting a side business, creating some additional income, increasing your income, however you want to call it, increasing your income in some way, shape, or form. And the third way is to do both. And the ones that were the most successful in my group of millionaires, self-made millionaires, were the ones that did both. They lived below their means and they expanded their means. And when they invested their money, they took calculated risk. They took a risk that was cautious, but it was nonetheless a risk. They could lose their money, they knew it, but it wasn't like they were playing the lottery. They knew what they were getting themselves into, and they were willing to take that risk. So one of the other money habits is you should do this anyway. Periodically audit your expenses. Life insurance rates are going down because longevity is going up. Homeowners insurance, that changes. You should look at that every year. Your cell phone bill, the Netflix is completely transforming. What's that other one? That TV, yeah. So it's completely it's throwing these internet companies for a loop. They don't know what to do. So there's all this competition from these areas that they didn't expect, and so they're dropping their prices. So you have to look with the increased competition and the rapid changes in technology. You have to look at your expenses periodically, and you'll find things. Not only will you find that you can reduce your expenses, but you're going to find that you're paying for a gym for the last 2 years that you haven't been to. Or you got a subscription to, Scientific America. Whatever it is. Reader's Digest, one of my favorites, but who has the time? So that's the other thing. Buying good quality used cars. This 44% of the wealthy bought used cars. And what was interesting to me when I did some third-party research was I found that Kelley Blue Book came out with a stat that they said the average new car, the minute it comes off the lot, drops 19%. And in some models, God bless you, in some models it can be as high as 40%. So the rich people, hey, they're rich for a reason, right? They say, I'm not going to buy a new car. I'll wait 2 years. I'll get that 20-30% discount. And they're making cars so well nowadays. When they hit 125,000 miles, that's when things start to go wrong. You need some major repairs. It's usually, according to, I think the same source, Kelley, it's about $1,500 a month, $1,500 a year for repair costs once you hit 125,000 miles. So, yeah, you're going to have that $1,500 every year, year in and year out, but that's still a lot less than you would pay on a new car or new lease, right? Coupons, Goodwill stores. One of the individuals in my study, I swear, I think they were worth $9 million. They would get this most incredible joy telling me that they went to Goodwill stores. You know what a Goodwill store is? Right, the old clothing, right? They said, oh, they have the best clothes there. High quality. And pennies on the dollar. All you got to do is take it to a tailor. You get the clothes fitted properly. But it gave them joy, happiness. And they're also the coupons. A lot of the wealthy people, 30% in my study, used coupons. What I thought was kind of shocking to me was that 32% of the poor used coupons. And I thought, why don't 100% of the poor use coupons? Right? It just didn't make any sense to me, but I think this is, again, habits. We get into the habit of not cutting out coupons. We get into the habit of cutting out coupons. We're not even aware we're not cutting out coupons because it never crosses our mind. Bargain shopping. The wealthy did not engage, at least the ones in my study, most of them didn't engage in this spontaneous purchases. They had the habit of bargain shopping. The problem with when you make some type of spontaneous purchase, there's emotion that's involved. So you're not looking at the price. It's completely, off the radar. So bargain shopping is a good idea. And I won't even get into that one. It's boring. Rich don't gamble. 77% of the poor play the lottery every week. Do you know, I wrote an article last week on this, and I found out that the Powerball, you have a 1 in 175 million chance of winning. That's virtually zero. So you have no shot in hell. So here's my $20. You're not going to win. Never. Ever. Here's my $20. 94% of the rich said that they never gambled, they never played the lottery. Just a different mindset. They don't rely on random good luck, the wealthy. They rely on something I call opportunity luck. There's 4 types of luck. There's random good luck, random bad luck. They're fairly democratic. They affect rich people and poor people equally. There's opportunity luck, and then there's detrimental luck. Opportunity luck is the byproduct of having good habits, doing certain things every single day that move you forward in life towards accomplishing your goals and your dreams. Detrimental luck, it also is like doing certain things every single day, except they're bad things. They're eating too much junk food, drinking too much. They're spending too much money so that you even have to go into debt. These are like little snowflakes. They build up on a mountainside, and you don't really see them accumulating until you have this avalanche event. And for rich people, the avalanche is an avalanche of success. For poor people, it's an avalanche of failure, misery, and poverty. Something bad happens. You have a heart attack. You find out you have type 2 diabetes. One of the wealthy people said to me, you can't make money in a hospital bed. Health is all you got, really. Health and family are the only important things in life. Read to learn. 88% of the rich read 30 minutes or more each day to learn. Right? I started doing that. I hate reading my technical stuff. The CPA, sit there and read about Section 257 that just came out with an amendment, a new regulation on Section 263, inventory pricing, capitalization. Hey, I'm drooling when I'm. But I have to read it. I have to do it. So I said, you know what? I can't read more than like 30 minutes of this stuff every day. So I commit to 30 minutes every morning. The first thing I do when I wake up, before I even go to the bathroom, I know I'm getting a little personal. I go down to my basement. My wife calls it the hole. And I sit there and I read my technical stuff because here's why. It takes my brain 30 minutes to wake up and say, I hate this crap. Stop. Stop reading. What it is willpower energy. We only have a certain amount of willpower energy. It only lasts about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Passion energy, when you're pursuing something you're passionate about, unlimited. It's amazing. I could write, when I was writing my book, Rich Habits, I was also studying for the CFP exam. It's a 10-hour exam, 2 days. It took me 6 months to study. But for some strange reason, I can't even fathom and understand. I had to write. When I started writing, I couldn't stop. It just grabbed me, and my dream just hoisted me up, and it said, keep writing. So I would finish studying 2 hours a day after work, and I'd spend the next 2 or 3 hours writing my book. I don't know how I found the energy, but when I was writing, I never was tired. When you're doing something, when you're pursuing something you're passionate about, when you're following your main purpose, you never get tired. 63% of the wealthy listen to audiobooks while they commuted to work. Now they have these great things called podcasts. Does anybody listen to podcasts at all? Oh, they're unbelievable. There's so many. You know how many? I've done 276 podcast interviews as of last week. I didn't even know what a podcast was. Somebody called me up 3 years ago. Hey, I want to interview you on your book and your research. And I said, okay, what radio station you with? No, I'm a podcast. And I was like, what the heck's a podcast? I had to research that. I didn't even know. I'm so naive about these media and stuff. Not anymore, but I was. 55% of the rich read self-help. That's good for me. 58% of the rich read biographies of other successful people. Only 11% of the rich read for entertainment. Whereas 79% of the poor who did read, they read for entertainment. Only 2% of the poor said that they read 30 minutes or more every day for education. 2%. 98% didn't have that habit. Their parents didn't teach them that. How much time we got here? What do you think, Earl?
I think
I can keep going and going and going. I'm like the Energizer, man.
Why don't we see if there's some questions?
Okay. All right, I'll cut it short there. Anybody have any questions? Because I got a lot of answers.